My step-grandparents tried to take my newborn daughter. This happened over 19 years ago, and I still cannot believe they thought it was okay. At the time of this incident, my husband and I had been married for just over 2 years. I was 25 at the time. I never had a good relationship with my step-grandparent because I was not their blood relation, so they didn't really think of me as a real person. My mother had divorced my father and then married his best friend and had a child with him. I was 11 when my youngest sister was born, so you understand that these people have known me for 15 years at this time. I did not have anything to do with my step-grandparents since I had turned 18. Not a malicious thing, I just worked a lot and went to school. I did not have anything to do with my step-grandparents since I had turned 18. Not a malicious thing, I just worked a lot and went to school. When I was 22, my husband and I got married. We kind of eloped. I had planned a big wedding, but everything fell through at the last minute, so we got married on the date I picked and had a honeymoon at the same time. Only my husband's family could afford to go with us. Fast forward a few years, and I gave birth to my very first child, a beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl. My daughter was probably about a week, maybe 2 weeks old at the time. I got a call from my step-grandparents asking me about my new baby, so I thought it was just a jovial call to ask me how things are going and see how the baby is. Their first great-grandbaby girl, if they had accepted me as a grandchild, but I digress. They then started to ask me what she looked like, so I told them. They thought that was wonderful. They then asked me what her name was. She had a gender-neutral name, but of course, they did not like that and kept insisting that it needed to be changed. I told them that was the name I gave because I liked. They then started to go on to talk about how I was going to send my daughter on a plane to visit. I was a bit taken aback, to say the least. I kindly informed them, no, I'm not going to put a newborn on a plane to go visit grandparents. They told me that they will have someone to come pick her up at the airport, and all I had to do was sign the papers. I asked, what papers are you talking about? They told me they needed custody paper because they needed to take her to the doctor when she arrived. I informed them that she has been seen by doctors already and has all her vaccinations already. Now, I haven't spoken to them in more than 4 years, and they're asking me to go to the airport and sign custody paper and put my daughter on a plane with a stranger. I kindly informed them that I was doing no such thing, that my daughter needs to be with her mother because I breastfeed her, because it's what's best for her. They told me that I needed to stop and I needed to put her on a bottle so that she would be ready for the trip. I had to tell them no. My daughter is not getting on a plane to go visit relatives in another state without her mother. They told me that I needed to just sign the papers and send her with the stranger. They even said that I could have children later, that I was young and could have children when I got married. I informed them that I am married and that my husband and I are not putting our child on a plane to go see relatives in another state when she's less than 2 weeks old. The conversation started to go really south. She started yelling at me how I was ruining it for her daughter, that her daughter would take care of a baby better than a child. Your aunt can't have children, and you were taking this away from her. That I was stealing her only chance to have a baby. That I'm selfish, self-centered, egotistical, arrogant, and rude. That I could have a child when I'm ready to be able to take care of this said child. That I was too young and needed to grow up, stop lying, and wait till I'm married to have a baby. That this was best for everybody. That I'm going back on my word. They then informed me that they were recording the call and a lawyer would be looking into it. That I somehow had agreed to letting them take my baby, and I'm now reneging on that. Mind you, I've not spoken to these people in probably more than 4 years. What they're talking about, I have no idea. My step-grandmother then informed me that I was disgusting for breastfeeding my child, and that I needed to just give her a bottle, like a normal person. That I needed to just bring the baby to the airport and sign the custody papers. That I was denying my baby doctor visits because I was supposedly so poor and couldn't afford it. My husband has insurance through his work. Where they got this information, I have no idea. She then decided that it was okay, that I could pump and just send her my milk and they would pay me for it since I needed money because I was so poor. If that were the reason why I wouldn't send my baby, they would at least pay me for that. However, somehow, I owed them my baby girl because 1. The baby is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl. 2. It's just what your aunt wanted her entire life. 3. You are a child and you cannot raise a child. 4. Apparently, I told them I would give them my baby, no way in hell, and now I'm lying so I can have money. WTF? I ended up telling them exactly how I feel about it. I told them I was not going to put my baby that I had with my husband on a plane to visit step-grandparents and a step-aunt that never really considered me as family. The fact that my step-aunt straight up hates me and has made it very well known that she does. When I was a child, my step-aunt told me to my face that I was worthless, that I was nothing, that my father divorced my mother because he couldn't stand me. I actually know for a fact that my mother mother divorced my father. I witnessed the abuse that my mother took from my father. She divorced him because of this. I also told my step-grandparents that I was never going to let them see my daughter because my step-aunt was so cruel to me when all I ever wanted was to be friends with her. All I ever wanted was grandparents that loved and cared about me, but they all made that very obvious that they never would, and I refused to subject my family to any more of this abuse. They started calling me all kinds of names, saying how they were going to sue me, and that they were going to get custody of my child whether I liked it or not, that I was somehow an unfit single mother living in a godly lifestyle. I had informed her just because she did not see me with her own eyes getting married does not mean that I am not married. These things happen every day without your eyes being upon them, that she was delusional for thinking that you can just take my baby without me having any say-so. I told them to never call me again. This whole event was so emotional to me that for many years I worried that someone would come and try to take my daughter from me. I became very protective of her. I would never let anyone babysit her. I now know that these are just crazy people trying to get what they wanted. But how in the world do they think they're going to take her from me? It is beyond me. Don't worry, I do not have any contact with these crazy people. No lawyer or anything ever came of all the threats. I just wanted to write this story and get it off my chest. I want to hear from others that I was actually justified in being the way that I am. I'm so sorry that you had to go through all of that. It sounds like your family is really messed up. I can't imagine how hard it must be for you to hear this from them, especially since they haven't spoken to you in 4 years. It sounds like they tried to take advantage of the fact that you were young and scared and didn't know any better than to just give them your daughter. But you're much wiser than they think. It sounds like you're making the right decision by keeping them away from her. I hope things will improve between you and your family, as it would be very helpful to your daughter to have grandparents in her life, but only if they are willing to accept you and her. Entitled Grandmother Opposes Our Relationship. Okay, let's take the proverbial cat out of the bag and slam it against a wall. I married my sister, but before any Alabama jokes start flying around, let me add some context. My dad passed away in a car crash when I was 2 years old, and my mother did not remarry until I was 7. The guy she married was an absolute awesome man, and one I called Dad for the first time. He was amazingly caring towards me and my mom, and would always be there for us. My mom was happy for the first time in years, and I finally had a role model I could follow, but he came as a package deal. He had a daughter that was exactly 1 year younger than me, and I mean exactly. Our birthdays were on the very same day. She just happened to be 1 year younger. As a young kid, I remember meeting her for the first time when they introduced us. My mom was dating him for a few months and wanted to wait to see how he would react, not only to a new dad, but to a new sibling as well. I remember laying my eyes on her and thinking, why is a fairy here? She was so beautiful that I was speechless for a few minutes, not knowing how to react, until my mom nudged me and said, well, aren't you going to say anything? I blubbered something that made my new sister giggle uncontrollably, and that was that. We had no problems whatsoever getting along, and everything was awesome. I had a new dad, a new sister, and my birthdays just became bigger and better, with a ton of new friends and lots more attention. Before, it was just me and my mom, and a couple of my friends. I didn't really have many friends at the time, and unlike the stereotype, my stepsister was an absolute joy to be around. She would play with me with whatever toys I wanted, and I would do the same. I didn't mind playing dolls with her. However, as time went on and we grew up together, our feelings also started to develop in a way that I was becoming worried. Well, let's just say that the inevitable happened, and by the time we were 16, 15, we had no choice but to come out to our parents. Much to our disbelief, they actually supported us, although I think I could see some raised eyebrows from our dad from time to time. The rest of the family? Not so much. My mom's side was kind of neutral on the thing. They didn't really oppose us, but they never actually approved either. But my dad's side? Holy smokes. They were out for blood, calling me a monster, saying I was taking advantage of my sister, and telling me I was going to hell for defiling a young girl. We hadn't done anything yet. My dad's mom was one of those religious nut jobs that just laps up everything the church says and gives 20% of her income to the church, saying, it's to pay for my heavenly apartment. Yeah, right. It's more likely paying for the Reverend's new Porsche Cayenne. We were planning to get married after we graduate, and our grandmother pipes up, saying the church would never marry us, and that we would always be condemned to a life of sin. Yeah, she's like that. Well, fast forward to present day. We're happily married by the church. We have twin daughters that are about to turn 10. I own my own business. She's a chef in a 5-star hotel, and everything is going, smoothly. Nah, that'd be too easy. Our life is good, but our relationship with our dad's side of the family took a really dark turn. We did invite them for our wedding, but they chose to not come and would harass us for years until we moved to a different different city. Our dad kept our new address a secret from his side of the family for quite a while, and despite his and our attempts to actually get along with them, this fell flat on its face. They never wanted to be a part of our lives, nor the lives of their great-grandchildren, until 2 weeks ago. On our daughter's birthday, our dad called us saying that his mother would like to make amends, that she's dying and wants to meet her great-grandchildren before she passes. After some deliberation, we decided to move our girls' birthdays to our old house with our parents and get the family together. For a while, everything seemed to go quite well. We got some odd looks from some of the family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc., and some whispers here and there, but otherwise, it was going well. Happy birthday was sung, the cake was cut, and presents were opened. I was in the kitchen helping clean up when I hear a faint conversation coming from the living room. I thought everyone went home, so I creeped up to see who it was, when I hear dear grandmother talking to the twins. I got closer, when suddenly, I heard the phrase, "You are children of the devil." I turned the corner when I saw both my girls with a scared expression on their faces, and this monster of a woman insulting my children, telling them I forced myself on their mother, and saying we were all going to hell, especially them since they were born from sin. I immediately went ballistic on this woman, telling her to keep her lies to herself and to not utter another word. My wife was upstairs and ran down hearing the commotion. I explained what had just happened, and her face turned from confusion to pure anger. She went off on her grandmother, telling her that this was the last time she was seeing the girls, and hoped she had a good time because this was her last. We left without a word, and only the day after did I explain to our parents what had happened. Obviously, Mom was royally pissed, but somehow Dad already knew this was gonna happen, but decided not to say anything, which kinda annoyed me. But then again, I guess he wanted his mother to meet her great-grandchildren, even though she was more concerned in doing whatever the hell she wanted. Now, we have two very confused 10-year-old girls asking all sorts of questions, but then again, I suppose this day was near. We just thought we could wait until they were older before we could tell them. They actually understood the situation, and are now asking us how we got along as kids. They're really curious. Unfortunately, the grandmother is still around, and shows no signs of kicking the bucket anytime soon. I feel so sorry for you, but at the same time, I'm so glad that you found each other and got married. You guys sound like a really great couple, and I wish you all the best. It's pretty cool that your grandmother had to live with her son after her husband died. My grandparents did something similar. Your grandfather sounds like he was a really nice guy, too. Anyway, my point is that you two seem like very strong people who have been through a lot of tough times together. I think that your kids are lucky to have such an awesome set of parents. I hope things work out for your mother-in-law as well. She seems like she needs some help. My step-aunt and my step-cousin hate me for having a boyfriend, then bring my verbal abusive dad to a family gathering. A little bit of backstory. I met my boyfriend at a pride party during June of 2020, before my country went into lockdown. Over the lockdown, we started to get to know each other over text, and during the second to last week of lockdown, he asked me to watch a movie at a teen movie theater. They play movies teens and younger adults like, so I said yes. We have been happy for 7 months. But on to today. During the new year, my step-aunt invited me to go camp. I wanted to say no, but my mom said I had to, since I've had social issues and she wanted to help. So at least 2 days beforehand, I texted my boyfriend and told him what's happening. He knows I get homesick, and he did the sweetest thing and recorded audio for when I needed comfort or when I had a nightmare, since he knows how bad my nightmares can be, and he didn't want me wasting phone credit on calling him at night. The day we left to go camping, I texted him quick before getting in the car. My step-cousin, who's the same age as me, asked, "Who are you texting, and why are they so important than your family?" I slightly rolled my eyes and replied, "Oh, my boyfriend. I was just texting him quick so he knows I'm okay." Her eyes suddenly widened, and then she tries to grab my phone. She was yelling for her mom, telling her, "Ope's trainee boyfriend is still with her." My stepdad grabbed my step-cousin and sat her in the car. He's a big buff dude, and I owe him a lot. He told my step-cousin to respect my choices, and also to respect my boyfriend. My step-cousin and step-aunt huffed as I got into the car and wanted to zone out. When we set up camp, I find out about disco that night, and anyone can go. I texted my boyfriend asking if he can go, and he was excited since he could use glow-in-the-dark face paint during the night. Later, when we ate dinner, my step-aunt found my sketchbook of all my art and looked through it, saying my art looked horrible, even though I learned from my sisters, my sister-in-law, and my art teacher, who spent time getting me to where I am. I grabbed my sketchbook and hid it in my tent so she couldn't get it. That night, when the disco started, my boyfriend showed up with the glow-in-the-dark face paint, and my step-cousin suddenly yelled yelled, "OMG, it's the tranny." My boyfriend looked at me with wide eyes, and I went to my protect mode and yelled back, "What's wrong with you? Can't you respect the fact I'm in love?" And then she yelled something the whole disco heard. Over the startup music that made everyone look at her in disgust, she yelled, "How comes you get a boyfriend and I don't? You are a hoe for having a trans one. You should break up with him and then wait for me to date someone." The whole night, my boyfriend and I, after doing our face paint, stayed at the back, hugging each other as the music and fireworks went off. My boyfriend texted my mom and stepdad, and they helped me pack up my tent and gear in the middle of the night, and they said my boyfriend could stay over at our house while we calmed down. Well, after New Year's Day, on the 2nd day of January, my family was holding a gathering. My family, my sister's-in-law's family, my extended family, and my boyfriend's family were all there. Later, the step-aunt and her brat of a teen walk in uninvited, with my dad in tow. My dad and the females of the family don't have a great relationship, and you'll see why. But my step-aunt yelled out, "Everyone, meet my boyfriend." My 3 sisters, my mom and me looked at each other and froze. My stepdad went big bear mode, and my boyfriend was going full protective mode. They ruined everything. My step-cousin kicked my cat for not letting him pet her. My dad verbally abused every female there, even if he didn't know them, and my step-aunt went into my room and ripped down all the art I had on the walls. She even drew over my sunset art on the wall my sister-in-law painted while I was away on a school camp. My stepdad kicked all 3 of them out, and my boyfriend's family made sure we were all okay, since they were anxious about my older sister's mental health. She has panic attacks, and one of them was a coworker at the therapy office she goes to. When everyone was getting ready to leave, my boyfriend's caregivers told me I was allowed to stay over any time. I thanked them, and when my boyfriend and his family left, my sister-in-law's family told my sister, my sister-in-law's wife, that she was blessed with such a great stepdad. When everyone left my family, we all had a family meeting and blocked my step-aunt on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and even blocked her contact. We all agreed that we needed to cut my dad out, since we were all hurt by the verbal abuse. My nice step-aunt filed a police report, and that was the end. You sound like a really great person, with a great close family and boyfriend. It's great that they all supported you in this situation. It's quite obvious that your step-aunt's family was in some way jealous of you, having a boyfriend before them, and they tried to make themselves feel better by belittling you. I'm glad in the end your step-aunt's family took it too far and got themselves banned from your life. Entitled stepsister gets schooled for thinking she's entitled to my money. I was born and bred in country A, a Southeast Asian country where the minimum wage is around $2.50 an hour. However, my dad was working in a large conglomerate and was given a huge title, which makes the family look quite wealthy on the outside, although his spending habits was off charts, and he'd have no savings at the end of the day. The old man had gone through a few series of marriages and divorces. Then, he finally settled down with a lady from country B, a former USSR country in Central Asia. The lady had a daughter from her previous marriage, and they both got absorbed into our family. When the old man passed away, Country A's law was to revoke the wife and daughter's residency and send them back to Country B. While mourning the old man's death, my uncle had agreed to take them in temporarily until their flights get settled, but the lady had given my uncle a very hard time. My uncle had to come up with the money from his own pocket because my old man had lost his high-paying job and all his retirement funds before his passing. During my dad's passing, I had migrated to Australia in search for a better life. However, I was really tight with money that I couldn't afford to buy a ticket to fly back and attend my old man's funeral. Several years had passed, and my stepmother plus stepsister had settled in their homeland. However, stepmom, who had caused trouble for my uncle and hates him with her whole guts, was smart enough to use her daughter to squeeze some cash out of my uncle, who has already retired and has limited retirement funds. As my uncle started cutting them off financially, they started contacting me, asking me not to forget them. I hadn't known about the issue between them and my uncle at that time. I managed to naturalize as an Australian citizen and secure a better paying job throughout the years. I saved up for a trip to Country as it was growing to be a tourist destination really quickly at that time, and that Country B had recently allowed Australian passport holders 3 months visa-free stay. And here, I thought that by visiting them, they could show me some sort of hospitality by showing me around their country country and that I could revisit some of their memories of my old man. What I get in return was that someone had stolen AU $400 out of my wallet, and I had to explore the country all by myself. My stepsister's fiance was always trying to squeeze out beer money out of me as we hang out. As I got back to Australia, COVID-19 struck. They found an opportunity to get my sympathy in order to give them financial aid. Stepdaughter will always text me bad news about how everyone is losing their jobs and can't afford bread, etc. However, as soon as lockdown was lifted in country B, stepsister posted photos of her marriage with her fiance in a lavish wedding at a restaurant. At that point, I thought they would understand that as married couples, it is their responsibility to make money for themselves and not depend too much on others. I was wrong. As soon as she gave birth, she kept on sending me photos of her baby out of nowhere. It felt much more annoying rather than cute, because it is as if she's implying that her baby is my responsibility. The worst part is whenever I post photos of holidays or buying new items, she would immediately send me messages asking me how I'm doing, followed by how bad the economy is in country B and how everyone is at the verge of losing their jobs. So immediately, I thought to myself that I shouldn't give her any more leniency. I started schooling her about responsibilities and how I'm no longer going to be involved in their lives. My relationship between them should have ended the day my old man passed away, and that all entitlements to our family's wealth, we didn't have any left to inherit, is no longer theirs. Now, the stepsister stopped messaging me. She probably told her mother that I'm finally cutting the cord between us, the cord that should have been severed the day my old man died. And just because I live and work in Australia, it doesn't mean that I'm ridiculously rich. The spending power of the Aussie dollar may be quite strong when going into some countries, but people forget that everyone, no matter what country they're working in, are all average income earners. You earn $700 a week. You spend almost $650 a week on weekly expenditures, especially if you're a migrant worker living by yourself with no family to turn to if you lose your job. So yes, I suggest cutting all ties with those not related to you by blood if the marriage had ended either by divorce or death. Kindness isn't going to teach entitled idiots like these people responsibility. I'm so sorry to hear about your dad and what you had to go through with your family. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for you, but I'm glad that you were able to get out of it. It's great that you've made a life for yourself in Australia and are doing well for yourself. It's also good that you tried being kind and setting boundaries with your family rather than being bitter towards them. Unfortunately, they couldn't do the same and obviously only see you as a human wallet. Now that you have cut them out, you can fully focus on your own life and happiness. With that, I wish you the best of luck. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Check out the other videos on your screen right now. Otherwise, you're definitely the jerk.